Yeah, can you, it's okay, I can wait. I mean, why don't you?
I think go ahead and commence and we'll cover it now.
Are you sure?
Yeah, it's getting late.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, I do. Yeah, good? Okay. Jazakallah. نحمده ونصلي على رسول الكريم أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه اللهم وفقنا لما تحب وترضى آمين يا رب العالمين. Dear brothers and sisters and audience on the live stream, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. First, apologies for being a little bit late. I am coming from a 18-hour route flight because of the rain, a little bit delays, and then waited for the attorney who's coming from the Westchester. So we do apologize for a little bit of the late beginning. Secondly, the Imam has mentioned the conduct of the meeting, so I don't need to repeat that. What I want to do is, as the mediator of a dispute that happened in this mosque, first give a little bit of chronology of the events, and then once I am done, a little bit of the legal aspects of it, because obviously the attorney who was designated for the reincorporation, that remarks, and then question and answers. The title of the session is Information and Question and Answers. So first, information that we would like to impart so that everyone is clear as to what happened with respect to the chronology of events, which is basically factual information. The reason why I am doing it is also what I'm going to explain why I am doing it as part of the effort that was initiated 2 months ago. The topic of this session relates to that what occurred 2 months ago, and if some of you were here on May 5th, Friday, I gave a sermon introducing that aspect. That purpose is why we are here, and I'm going to quickly jump to the technical reason why we are here. And then I'll come to that. So just follow my lead. And then, inshallah, in Q&A, everyone is absolutely open, fair, and transparent to ask questions, debate, have a dialogue, no problem. My role is to tell you the facts and then certain proposals that I made that were then agreed upon by certain people. Could you have disagreements and disputes about that? Absolutely. My role is exactly that. Mediate between certain parties. Is everyone going to be happy about it, not happy about it? That is why we are here. The technical reason why we are here is, and again, like I said, I'm fast forwarding, is because of what is called a TRO, a temporary restraining order, on what the masjid was embarking on. In my personal opinion, again, I'm not an attorney, and I apologize to the attorney if this doesn't go well from an attorney point of view. I think it's a wonderful TRO. It's a wonderful order. From what point of view? There are 3 very critical words used in the TRO by the judge, which is fair, open, and transparent. And I'm of the personal opinion that absolutely everything should be fair, open, and transparent. Why certain things, a lot of musings were, why 3 copies, why masjid, and I'm again going to come back to it in a chronological manner. Because there were certain things that the attorney will explain that there was a certain logic behind it, but none of it was to withhold information. However, now that we actually have a judge's order for 30 days, which is sufficient time to make all the aspects very clear, fair, open, and transparent, that is why this session is being held. And then open debate about what people disagree or agree with. And honestly, maybe should have done it before. The fact is, instead of dwelling on the past, yes, good, it's being done now. And now it's being debated. But now let's go through the chronology of how we got here to this technical point on July 10th. So a couple of months ago, and some of it might be a little bit repetitive for the people who came for the Friday sermon that I gave on May 5th. A couple of months back, I came to know of a dispute among, a conflict among two groups within the masjid. Now, a little bit side note, I'm not a regular member of the masjid. I reside in 3 different countries, 3 different cities actually, New York, London, and Islamabad. I'm actually flying from 2 of them right now. Literally, my time is spent 33% in each place. So when I came to know, not being a regular member of the masjid, I initiated, let's make that clear, nobody asked me to. No one asked me to mediate, no one asked me to, I just heard that for the last 10 months people are doing, and now if you remember from my sermon, I am one of the first musallis of this masjid. When it was first started by Brother Surat Khan, I was the little boy who was giving azan on the steps of that old house along with his son Musa. So I have that attachment of originality. Without any, 25 years, 35 years this mosque has been, I've never been part of anything. When I found out, again on my own, the first person I approached, who I always remember and respected as a leader in the community, was Dr. Hafizur Rahman. And I went to him at his house, and we had a discussion, and I said, again, literally requested, do you think that, I have certain things that I might be able to offer? So many people, I had by that time talked to other people, and they said that we've tried this and we've tried that. And I said, I'm just going to be one person who's going to try, whether they're going to accept it. And if you remember in my khutbah, I gave a limit of 10 days. Why 10 days? Because those were the days I had left, basically, before I left again on my tour, on my 33% in the other country. And those are very significant ones because I'm part of certain governmental aspects, what is the political situation that is going on in Pakistan, sort of the similar role between power players over there. So my time is very restricted, and that's the only reason. A lot of people ask me about my after khutbah, why did you say 10 days? It's because on the 11th day I had a flight I had to take care, so I had a very restricted time. In those 10 days, a lot of aggressive things were taking place. I had a very aggressive approach because I had a deadline. After I met with Brother Hafizur Rahman, I found out that the other party's petition had certain tenets that required meeting with them rather than calling a mediatory meeting. So I met with the other party. First person, 2 people that I met was Brother Athir Sohail and Brother Shahid Mia. The first thing they objected to, and this is the only objection that I heard of me being a mediator, was actually literally from Brother Shahid Mia, that you're the son of one of the board members. So Brother Shahid Mia was the first person who objected to it. Nobody from the BOT objected to it. The first person I met from the BOT, Dr. Hafizur Rahman, then I spoke to Brother Rafi Rajput, and so on and so forth, Brother Amir Faruqi, people in the board. But he objected to it. He said, you will probably favor them. I said, if you say right now, if all people don't agree, I'm not going to proceed. And that was my first start. Eventually, I was able to convince them that, and the factual manifestation of this is, that during the mediation, it has been 2.5 months that I've spoken to my father. We live in the same house, but I've not spoken to him about this issue. In fact, the protocol is that my father is allowed on the Zoom meetings. I even said that to certain people that maybe I won't allow him on the Zoom meetings, even though everybody had agreed. But certain ethics I follow based on my own experience, and I said, you know, this might come up, some people might say. They said, no, that would be a little bit disrespectful, let him come, you know, and be part of the meetings. I said, okay, if you agree. And as a result, now I'll go through some of the chronology facts, and please bear with me because you need to know why we are here and how we got here, right, before we debate the content of it, so that you understand that it was done all under the auspices of, let's say, harmony, unity, and my initial effort to bring people together without any bias. Once that happened, I was able to get them together, which is a matter of 2 days. Now, literally, they started on April 23rd. I believe Eid was on April 22nd. The first meeting we had was at Dr. Hafizur Rahman's house. He was gracious enough to host all these, not everybody came. One person from the petitioner side, I believe, came. And I'm sorry because I'm from an 18-hour flight, so my memory might be a little bit hazy right now because of tiredness. But I'll try to recall as much as I can. And in that meeting at Dr. Hafizur Rahman's house, we decided to proceed forward. And then the second meeting was held at my residence, which is, actually I shouldn't say that, it's my father's residence. We live together. And at that meeting, the same people who were in the first meeting came. And given my experience, for some reason, not that I didn't trust anyone, I recorded everything. Each meeting, the visual footage, the hugging each other, the talking about each other, the signing of it, just so that it is recorded, because that's what I've done in the mediation before, whenever I've done that. And if you've seen that, and I'll pull up so that you understand how we got here. So bear with me a little bit. So finally, over the next 7 days, on April 29th, after going through certain drafts, and I'm again going to come to the draft, again, based on my non-attorney, non-legal, layperson perspective, but an educated perspective, because of my involvement in other masajid, I had heard of this issue before, and I've actually helped facilitate certain people. Like, because of confidentiality, I can't name their names or the masajid that I was involved in. But we got together finally on April 29th, and I had a proposal. I said, why don't we reincorporate this masjid, get a fresh start under Article 24? The current bylaws are under Article 10. So a little background on why I suggested this. Again, keep in mind, it was a suggestion that was agreed upon. Remember, the role of the mediator is to propose. You don't have to agree. Mediation is not binding. But eventually everyone probably found out. At any moment, people could have said no. So why I proposed Article 24 as opposed to Article 10. And here is, with all due respect to the current BOT members, all of you, all 7 of you plus all 8 of you, I wanted to sort of, and I'm telling this very personally, when I saw the petition that the petitioners had presented, it was factually very correct. Factually, it was very correct. What did it say? The petition said that for the last the first part of the petition, there are 6 points. The first part of the petition said that the Board of Trustees has been non-compliant in terms of governance. for all 35 years. For all 35 years. And that's a pretty big thing. And I said, there's no way out of this. They are. When I looked at it, from my understanding, yes, they are. In what respect? Now, keep in mind, when I say this, please don't vilify the Board of Trustees for the rest of what they have done. This is only the aspect of governance. Governance. What you see in front of you today with 1,000+ people gathering in Fridays is because of these people, the contributions that they made. Financial, personal, time, all kinds of investment. And this is the argument I took to the petitioners. I said, you're factually very right. What was the biggest non-compliant mistake that they made? If you look at the first certificate of incorporation in 1988 on December 2nd, which, by the way, this little boy typed. I typed it when Suraj Khan dictated it to me. That says, like any, whether it's a 501c, by those rules, you're supposed to elect certain trustees. All of you are corporate people, you understand this, nothing very difficult to understand, that you're supposed to have elections every 3 years. What happened? 88 to 91, 91 to 94, 94 to 97, no elections. Why? Because when you're starting something, they were just going by. Did they have any malicious intent not to have elections? No. I'm using these words very carefully because though I don't have to repeat then what strategy I used to follow my thought process, what strategy I used to convince them, the petitioners. Then 2007, fast forward, they came up with a new constitution. Again, they didn't have elections. So if you think about it, from 1988 to 2023 or 2022, when this petition started, to be specific, no elections of Board of Trustees were held. That's the basis of the petition. And as a result, because BOT is the final authority according to the bylaws, everything else is unconstitutional. Think about it. If the parent rule, so you can even, somebody can tomorrow come up with a petition and say, that bulb is unconstitutional. Because it was done under the people who, by their very nature, they're unconstitutional. Right? So I went to the petitioners with this logic. Now, I understood this, right? Now, of course, the legal people, the very esteemed attorneys, they can come up with various defenses and, for why this happened, law of precedence, a lot of legal terms. And it could be dragged in court, and it could be, there are legal expenses involved. Why should the mosque's funds be used for something? This was another impetus I had. Why the mosque's funds should be used for something that we know happened wrong, right? So then I went to the petitioners with this logic. I said, look, if you follow the dictates of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the biggest rule is forgiveness. Biggest rule is forgiveness. Look at Fateh Makkah. The very woman who ripped his uncle's heart out, he forgave her. We're not at that level over here. The very woman, he forgave her. So I went to the petitioners with this thought process in mind, and I said, forgive them. Simple. Honestly, that was my words. Forgive them. They didn't mean anything bad. Can you use terms like, you were sleeping on the job? A lot of negative terms can be used, right? Two of these terms, I even remember when I was at Dr. Fiza Rahman's house, at the counter, literally this person, despite his health, we had such an engrossed discussion that 1 to 2 hours, he was literally standing on the counter. He didn't even sit. Of course, it was an issue. And he used the word, unfortunately, we were sleeping on the job. And I said, I think I can convince the other people. Again, no confidence, no legal knowledge, no legal background, just the fact that I said forgiveness might be the rule. So I went to the petitioners and I said, in addition to forgiveness, I just found a little rule in Article 24, which says that we can have what is called an elders board. An elders board. Again, the attorneys can look at the legalities of it. At that time, I thought. And I said they can have an elders board. So the very people who for 35 years have not followed, again, when I say not followed, please understand the spirit. There was no intent not to follow. That's my assumption. In other words, मैं थोड़ी पर्दापोशी कर रहा हूँ. मैं थोड़ा जिस कल्चर से मैं आया हूँ, उस कल्चर में बड़ों की रिस्पेक्ट की जाती है. बड़े गलती भी करें तो रिस्पेक्ट की जाती है. बाप अगर ज़्यादती भी करे तो रिस्पेक्ट की जाती है. I said, it's okay. कोई बात नहीं. बाप गुस्सा कर देता है, बच्चों को गुस्सा कर देता है, बच्चे थोड़ी बदतमीजी भी कर देते हैं. But at the end of the day, they're like fatherly figures. So let them stay. I had no idea that they were actually going to accept it. So now it's the petitioners' magnanimity, unka badapan hai, that they are very right in their petition. And then there are certain technicalities that the EC election was not held correct. But nothing, to me, none of that mattered. What mattered was that bunyadi galat hai. The bunyadi petition is that BOT is wrong. Hence, everything else is wrong. So I said, if everything else is wrong, then tomorrow anybody can come and say, I'm filing a petition for this, I'm filing a petition for that. When is this going to end? Where is this going to end? How is this going to end? Forgiveness. So we came up, again, I proposed. And I said Article 24 says that we can have a bit of an elders board, let them stay. Now imagine that after 35 years of quote unquote committing a non-compliance in the form of governance, you still retain, or you're allowed to retain. I said, okay, that was the first step. The second step is that as a result, why don't we then start all over again, and just like in 1988 we incorporated, we reincorporated under Article 24. Because it allows this leverage of BOT staying. And I said, are you sure? I said, okay. So on April 29th, we met at my residence. I told the petitioners to select 5 people. They wanted 7 against 7. And I said, let's not play tit for tat. And this word tit for tat is going to come again in my remarks. I said, let's not play tit for tat, because I'm not about to give you 7 seats on the board, you know, because they have to be elected. So I said, as part, again, my thought process, right? It's not legal. You can object to it. You cannot like it. In the Q&A session, anyone can come up and say, Brother Irfan, no, I don't like your idea. It should have been something else. Fine. But the people that were involved at that point, all of them very willingly, very smilingly agreed and signed. Here are the 12 people who signed. Brother Surat Khan was not available. He attended the meeting by phone. And I had triple verification done by him through WhatsApp, because I know human tendencies. People at some point will come up and say, oh, well, he wasn't there, hence the mediation is nullified. I've done this before. He's an ailing person, hardly can walk. So I had him on the phone throughout the meeting, and I had a video and audio, because I knew that the notary was going to ask. And in that WhatsApp, had him send his driver's license, all legalities fulfilled to sign the agreement. because he wasn't there in person. And in this day and age, especially after what we went through in COVID, electronic formatting is allowed quite a bit because you can't attend meetings all the time in person, so you can have board meetings even via Zoom, consent via Zoom. Mr. Rafi Rajput and Mr. Surat Khan, Mr. Amir Farooqi and Mr. Iqbal Khan, I took their pictures of signing each and every document. At any point, if anyone can extrapolate from this, that somebody said that Mediator forced them, just tell me if you see any gun pointed at their head in my pictures. I didn't force anyone. Then Mr. Hafiz Rahman, Mr. Masood Hashmi, Mr. Riyad Khan, Mr. Athar Sohail, Mr. Shahid Mia, Mr. Muhammad Shahid, Mr. Muhammad Yunus, Mr. Sajjad Ahmed. And then at the end, they so willingly, nicely even cut a cake. Right? इस पूरे process में अभी तक, I know, but it's important. It's important. I know the time is short. And this is not just the only session. We can have more sessions. This is not the all-in-one session. I understand timing, but it's very important because the TRO, the judge is right. You have to make this process transparent. You have to let people know. When I gave the khutbah, if you remember, I kept looking at the clock and I said, I don't have enough time. I wish I did. And honestly, I want to say this to the entire congregation. I wish I had done this before. But partly it's because of my own shortcoming, or if not shortcoming, my schedule. Like I said, I live in 3 different countries. And at the end of the mediation, they cut a cake. Right? And then we started the process of reincorporation. Again, why? Because the fundamental people that were involved in this process agreed to it. So I don't effectuate any process. I don't tell people what to do. I suggest you decide. I suggest you decide. I suggest you decide. Then I take your pictures. And I make sure that it is part of the record from a legal point of view also. Right after the mediation on April 29th, now we are here 2 months later, 2.5 months later, I was out of country. I held a lot of Zoom meetings from London, from New York, from Islamabad, from airports, to make sure that we are on track for the reincorporation process. Until we get to July 10th. I arrive, I find this TRO. I said, no problem. The judge is very right. If you look at the TRO, you can't have a meeting. The judge says in the TRO that this meeting, members meeting, now members meeting. You know what other thing that the BOT did not do for the last 35 years? Not one annual congregation member meeting. You see these 2 sentences that I have to very painfully say today? That the BOT did not do this and the BOT, that's what I was trying to protect. Maybe wrongly. I just didn't want to say that out loud because I respect these people. I know what they have done for this masjid. So just because they fell short on the governance point of view, I didn't want to vilify them. That was my intention. The attorneys, their intention may be different because obviously they're retained and they're paid. So we went through lots of meetings, and the third part, the members' meeting, was called for July 10th. During these 8 weeks, we diligently worked on what you now call, even the term CBL is something I came up with as an abbreviation of Constitution and Bylaws, CBL. It's just a generic term. It's referred to as Constitution or bylaws, again. And we looked at the bylaws of the previous, of the 35 years, or from 2007. 17 non-compliant self-contradictions in those bylaws. But what did the judge say in TRO order? They have to follow the existing. So the bylaws do matter, even though they might be wrong. It's not Article 10, it's not Article 24. Okay, fine. Now, I find this very positive that you have an order that says that you have to follow fair, open, and transparent within, these are the exact words of the TRO, within the existing laws and constitution of the masjid. So then if that is true, then the elections of the trustees, all things will have to follow this, right? The members list, which is another issue. In my personal opinion, unfortunately, again, I have to use this term, probably the most disorganized members list that has kept over the 35 years. It's like whichever year that you are is the only list that you have. You don't have no record of previous before. So I had to resort to a system called, I was told, and here I personally thank the help of Brother Akil Rahman, who is treasurer, whose job was not to provide a membership list. I asked him, can you verify the membership payments against the names that are on the list? I mean, I have no reason. I have one list from some, I was given 4 lists. Which do I follow? Which do we follow? So we had to come up with some criteria, and the only criteria is, okay, which members actually paid and their transaction is verified. Because the laws say, Article 5, Section 4 of the existing Constitution, that a new member is only eligible to vote after 180 days of what they pay. I don't say this. New people don't say this. The bylaws that you guys have all been following, unknowingly maybe, unbeknownst to you, says that. Right? I said, okay, if that's the bylaws, then that's the rule. I personally don't like it, but that's what it is. Thank God the judge says you have to follow the law. You have to follow the bylaws. Good. As a result, a members' meeting on July 10th was called, and then that's why we are here today, because the judge said, no, wait a little. Wait a little. And that's my layperson interpretation. I'm not using legal languages. Wait a little, no problem. आप अगर ये मीटिंग जुलाई 10 को करना चाह रहे थे, 30 अगस्त को कर लें। जहां 35 साल इंतजार किया है एक मेंबर मीटिंग का, जो 35 साल में नहीं कराई गई, 1 महीना और इंतजार कर लें। That's how I read a judge's order. That's how I interpret. Again, my extrapolation. No problem. But don't vilify each other. Get together and come up with a reason to move forward. Reincorporation is masjid ki honi hai, for the reasons that I just mentioned. Ye kisi ka agenda nahi hai. I just explained to you 35 years of non-compliance. Kaise fix karenge isko aap log? One way to fix it, open, again, I keep using the words from the TRO, open, fair, and transparent. So when the judge said that you can't have this meeting, because it doesn't, then I said, okay, this is the time now to have an open information and Q&A session. This is the chronology and the background to where we are. Factual information, nothing disagreeable, because I just gave you the facts. From here, I turn over to the attorney to give. I know that my remarks were very long because I just summarized for you a 2.5-month process. I've left some things out unintentionally, and those can come up in Q&As. But here, this is what happened. That's what happened. Then there are certain specific questions, which in my second part I'll go into. Let me now give the mic over to Mr. Barry Black to give his perspective on things while you keep this background in mind. And then before we go to Q&A, we will enclose. And keep in mind, don't worry, this is not the only session. We can have more sessions, Zoom, anywhere else, okay? So let me just give the mic to Mr. Barry Black and give his remarks.
Good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum. I am touched by the words of the Imam reminding me of my place in the house of God. And I am brought into the reality that whatever I know in the law and whatever I know of the law is all by the grace of God, the wisdom that God gives us all. And I am privileged to be here in your home and in the spirit of what the Imam said. I was hired, my firm was hired to represent one side, one group within a dispute. But I am very happy, and it doesn't happen so often, I should tell you, but I'm very happy that very quickly my role changed, because I was then representing both the petitioners and the respondents in a joint effort to work through with Dr. Iqbal in the mediation and to work through a resolution of what started off as a dispute and then became a joint effort, a team effort, to figure out the best way to go forward. And I love that kind of a result where we can move past the dispute and work toward a resolution. To me, that is the most rewarding thing as a lawyer that I can experience. I know that Dr. Iqbal mentioned the how for so long there has been almost virtually no compliance with the statute, because we are incorporated under Article 10 of the Religious Corporations Law, and in so many ways there has been virtually no compliance. But I want to assure you one thing: you are not alone. There's something unique about the law firm. Our law firm is all we do is what we call religion law. We do nothing. We don't do real estate. We don't do matrimonial. We don't do criminal. We don't do corporate. We only do representing religious organizations and questions of religion, religious discrimination. That's the only thing we do. And so we have represented houses of worship from so many faiths: Islamic, Christian, Jewish, Hindu, Sikh, you name it, we've done it. And I want you to know that what your experience, including the lack of compliance, is not unique to you. It happens all over in every faith and in every denomination, but there's a reason, a particular reason why it has happened here, and that is you're pretty young. I mean, 30, 35 years is not that long, not that old. We represent congregations. We have one congregation in Brooklyn now that's 200, I believe over 200 years old. It's like you're talking the Mayflower. I mean, that's when they first started their churches here in Brooklyn. And so what happens is you have a few amazing people. I have learned in the last few weeks how the founders of this masjid, went and knocked on doors and went through telephone books to try to build this place from nothing. And what you experience now is growing pains. It happened so fast. Thank God that you grew from nothing into such a beautiful, beautiful place in such a short period of time. And with growing pains, what happens often is we're so busy. I think you said it before, Dr. You're so busy, you're so distracted, building the building physically, getting the members, doing everything that it takes to make this happen, that you just don't even realize. Time flies. Everybody puts the books away and the law books and the compliance and the statute, and you forget. It happens all the time. You are not the only congregation I've represented that has not had a member meeting in several dozen years, or has an unelected board. We represent congregations where you have a pastor who runs the congregation like it's his own. And it's not because he's a bad man, it's just he doesn't know. That's the best he knows. He's always done it, and then a dispute happens. And somebody says to him, usually a lawyer, he says, "When is the last meeting you had?" And he says, "What's a meeting?" And then you realize that this is a bad situation. So I want you to know you're not alone. And we can fix this very, very easily. But there's one other reason why there has been a lack of compliance. And the reason in your case one of the reasons in your case that there has been, I think, a lack of compliance is unfortunate that it's not until 2016 that the New York State Legislature makes a statute for Islamic houses of worship. Now, why do I say that? See, when they made this statute, New York's Religious Corporations Law, the earliest versions that we have, the statute from 1813, and even that one, which was the first statute formalized, even before that, there were little statutes, and they put 1813, then in the late 1800s, the early 1900s, they codified the current version of the Religious Corporations Law. It had then like 20 or 30 different faiths, specifically for Catholics, for Protestants, for this one and for that one. Well, there weren't that many Islamic congregations and communities in America at that time, so they didn't make a specific one. So what's the importance of having a section of the Religious Corporations Law that's specific to a particular faith? It's not just because it's nice to have your own section so you feel important. It's not just about that. Every section of the Religious Corporations Law, take Article 7 for Baptist churches, okay? Article 7 for the governance of a Baptist church. The Baptist church is a very, very old church tradition in America. It has a book. It's called Hiscox, Hiscox. That was a pastor who in the 1800s wrote a whole guidebook of how a Baptist church has to govern itself religiously and corporate-wise. Had nothing to do with American law, it was church law. But then when they made the Religious Corporations Law, they said what? Well, if there's going to be a Baptist church in New York, the rules that govern the Baptist church should reflect the traditions of the Baptist church. So they took Hiscox, and if you read Hiscox, which predates the Religious Corporations Law by a significant period of time, and you look at the RCL, the religious, it's virtually chapter by chapter, verse by verse. It reflects the rules so that a Baptist church governs itself the way it's supposed to, the way it's used to, the way it traditionally did. Now, when you have a mosque, in, what was it, 1988? In 1988, there was no there was no Article 24. So the only option you had was 9 and 10, Article 9 and 10. Article 9 is very rarely used in New York, and so Article 10 is basically where it's called other denominations. In other words, other faiths that are not specified, that don't have their own statute. So by default, if you don't have your own statute, you go under that statute. So that's what you did, and that was the right thing to do at the time, because there was no other choice. But what I have learned, and I have over time been involved in disputes and in other questions of governance involving mosques, And I have learned very quickly that a mosque is the tradition of a mosque is not really very compatible with Article 10. Jewish congregations are pretty much compatible with Article 10. Hindu, we have a lot of problems with Hindu. We've represented a number of Hindu temples also. They're better for Article 9s, not really Article 10s. But the mosque really doesn't have a home in the RCL until Article 24 is incorporated. It matches the traditions of how you govern yourselves, of how it's run, the role of the religious authority, the role of the imam. It reflects that's why it's written for Islamic institutions. So that's the importance. So I want you to know that part of the reason that you have not governed yourself the way Article 10 is, because it doesn't really work very well for you. And so my sense is, by default, you went into the way mosques usually run, and that's not Article 10. And so it doesn't match, and therefore you ended up doing your own thing. You forgot about Article 10, and you were on autopilot, and you were just working. But that is bound to collapse at some point, because then there's a dispute. At some point is inevitable, and we all wake up and say, wait, we're not doing this right. And then we have to figure out how to do it right. So that's the background that I gave you, just so you understand why Article 24 is a much better fit, because it was designed for a mosque. And it reflects the way a mosque has to govern itself much, much better than Article 10. And that's the background I would like you to be familiar with. So with that, I see Dr. Iqbal just went to the back, but I don't want to go on and on. I'm happy to answer your questions. So as soon as he comes back, we can break to the next section. And by the way, I told my wife, as per my conversation with Dr. Iqbal, I said, they promised me 1:30 to 2:30. The first hour, I'm here, and then at 2:30, I'm leaving. So it's now 2:45. But I'm happy to be here and to give as much of time as I need.
Yes, so inshallah, now it is open, and whoever whoever would like to ask a question, please come up over there. Yes, and ask your question or comment, anything.
Assalamu alaikum. Yeah, so I respect everybody and love everyone for the sake of Allah, whoever present here. So my first question to the attorney. Yeah, my name is Shoaib, nickname, and real name is AFM Rahman. Probably few people know me here, but most people maybe doesn't know me. Yeah, so my first question is, so when is Article 24 is enacted?
When?
Yeah.
2016.
So do you think, so after 2016, any proceedings happen at MDQ will become like null and void?
I'm not sure what the question is. Ask the question again.
Like it's enacted like 2016, am I right?
Yes.
So that time probably we didn't follow all those rules and regulations at MDQ.
Oh, no. So let me explain to you how it works. You are organized under Article 10. Yeah, that's probably going to be a better mic. You are organized.
Hello?
Yeah, you are organized under Article 10. So right now, you are subject to Article 10, not Article 24. So that's what governs you now. In fact, interestingly, Article 24 itself says that if you have a right to switch, but right now you're governed under Article 10 until such time that comes that you switch.
Okay. Yeah, so thank you, Barry.
Sure.
Yeah, so my suggestion is, it's not my question, my suggestion is I think LT, meaning the lifetime trustee members, the number of lifetime trustees should be 6, and ET, which is elective trustees member, should be 12. Why is that? I think that's why young people and people from any different cultural background can join and blend in MDQ.
Thank you for your suggestion.
Yeah, and I know you say good standing members, so I read the CBL. So I think any people who pay his or her dues, even the day before the vote, should be allowed to vote. My suggestion, okay?
On that,
I mean, you can define number of.
no, that's a very good suggestion. Just keep in mind one technical point. We cannot go to Article 24 until we hold the elections to adopt Article 24. So the laws that we have to follow is current bylaws. You understand?
Yeah, I understand, but we can, I mean, enact new laws, you know. I
Yes,
mean,
in the new laws.
At masjid, you know, MDQ.
Right.
I mean, we can, you know, by voted, we can also enact new laws, am I right?
When a congregation gets to adopt bylaws, bylaws have to be consistent with the law. That's the first rule. So you always start with a law, you read the law, and if, for example, if the law says that under an Article 10 that a majority of the congregation votes, the bylaws cannot say 75% of the congregation gets to make the decision because it would conflict with the law itself. So the bylaws can say it's a majority of the vote, but first you have to have this procedure. You know, it could set up rules around the law, but it has to be consistent with the law. So we can't make up our own rules that conflict with the law.
All right, thank you. Can I come back for more question later? Sure. All right, thanks. I'll give a chance.
Yeah, it would be nice if you keep your comments. Yeah, please go ahead. Comments and questions so that you can give other people chance. And again, keep in mind that this is not the end of it. I mean, at 3:30, the attorney has to leave. I will still stay here for another half hour, and then we can reschedule more sessions. So try to keep it as brief. Yes. One second.
Yes.
1 second. Yes, if please, the sisters. One other thing, and this is not in my opening remarks. I should have mentioned this. And again, the cue from Dr. Hafiz Rahman reminds me. One very important aspect of this bylaws is there is absolutely, over the last 35 years, no sisters female representation. I'm talking about the trustee and level and EC level. Like on the administrator, let's put it administrative level. So please, when you eventually decide to reincorporate, I have proposed during the reincorporation meetings that at least, whatever the number is going to be legally, that at least minimum 2 sisters from whether the number eventually, according to law, number is 18 or at least 2 people, 2 individuals from in the Board of Trustees should be from the sisters. Whether they qualify, they don't qualify, you know, we can do, but there is a big aspect of sisters representation in the administrative aspects of the mosque. That should be there. Please go ahead.
We're grateful, Barry, you're here with us. One of the fundamental thing I was looking at it is from Quran, the founders. Quran talks it as Awwadeen, the first one, and you have to show the respect for that. We have a scholar came in Ramadan, is one of those nights. If you guys remember, he was saying very bluntly that you have to show the respect for your founders. That's the thing, I get it from there. I'm looking at it from American law. What's the status of the founders of any trust or any organization or any religious organization?
It's a great question. Many of the sections of the Religious Corporations Law make reference to elders or eldership board in Article 24. The thing is, it doesn't define what that means. Now, in some faiths, elders has a religious connotation, a semi-religious connotation, like elders in a Christian church have a support role, but they're not necessarily ordained or involved in a religious aspect of the function of the church. But the word eldership is somewhat new, and that's in Article 24. But there's something else. Even in Article 24 and in other sections of the not-for-profit code, there's reference to people being elected or appointed by virtue of their position in the organization. You know what that means, that phrase? That means by virtue of what you've done for the organization. So if somebody's going to be elected to a high office in an organization because they've given $20 million and they've donated 100 hours a year, that's by virtue of their position. They are authorized to ascend to be higher up, of course. So when I hear the stories of people who came here and started and went through phone books and started the brilliant idea of trying to speak to real estate agents and creating a community, not just a mosque, but creating a community, attracting Muslims to a community so you could build a community and a mosque. I mean, that's incredible what the people and then their colleagues who started together. And so of course there is a role for people like that, for their wisdom, for their foresight, for their vision of growth. You always want that. But that said, there is also a place, the gentleman who spoke before you spoke of the younger people coming in who bring a modern set of ideas, and that's important too. We're evolving as a society, we're evolving as a legal system, and we're evolving as a faith, and we need to hear fresh voices too. So there should be a balance, and we thought that the balance that was created with the duality of the lifetime members, which is mostly the founders, and the elective trustees, gives you that kind of balance.
Good, thank you. The second question, Barry, I have is, I'm the one of the people who signed that incorporation on Article 10. I didn't know what I was signing. So it is started,
Yeah.
And that 10 has created...
Yes, you're talking about the 1988.
Article 10 has created such a big problem for us. And when I'm looking at it, that's a corporate law, whatever was there. And, the provision, as you said it very clearly, it doesn't favor any organization, any Islamic organization or any mosque.
Right.
The question is Article 10, and it hangs us because we were subject to, in violation, many things, whatever. But then we have a constitution came out. I wish I would have 10% of this kind of interest in that constitution, the one we put it in. And if we had have corrected it, we should not have any problem, because now I see it, there is ambiguity, there is things which is against the law of the land, and so I'm weighing one against the other. What's the legal aspect of that?
Well, so that's a very good question, because as I said earlier, you always start with the law. The second thing you look at is the certificate of incorporation. It's a hierarchy. The law, the certificate of incorporation, and the bylaws. The certificate of incorporation has to comply with the law, And the bylaws have to comply with the certificate of incorporation and the law. And so what we spent so much time on creating the CBL because what we tried to do is we tried to comply with Article 24, but also as much of your current constitution that we could legally incorporate, we tried to bring the two together. So some things needed some massaging, some things couldn't go at all because they were just completely in conflict with the law. But for the large part, I think we incorporated a significant majority of what you have in your current constitution, but we fixed it and we made it compliant with the law and compliant with, I don't know how you govern yourself exactly, but we took feedback from the members of the Reincorporation Committee and, of course, from Dr. Iqbal, and we tried to create something that reflects who you really are, who the law says you have to be, and what your old constitution says you should be.
Thank you.
I'm not hearing.
Since 1988, since the beginning of the masjid, I've been praying Tarawih. We had a curtain behind the masjid, behind the mikvah, and with 3 sisters. I was one of them. I'm here from the very beginning. I don't have to be a paid member. Anyone who contributes and donates to the masjid automatically becomes a member. We've been praying here from day one. You cannot forget that. I would like to be part of the voting process. And it was very horrifying to hear a few months ago that some people have sued the masjid. And unfortunately, there were Muslims who sued the masjid. This was a horrifying fact. How could you sue the masjid? For God's sake, what is wrong with you? And then, who is paying for all this? Let the people who sued the masjid pay for this. It should not come out from the funds that are collected at the masjid meetings and annual.
Sister Vijaya, can you please pass this mic to the sister because we can't hear her?
Well, we can hear her, but not well.
And use this mic.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum. This is Nigar Rahman. I have been a congregant from day one, from 1988. I've been praying in the masjid when we had that small house up behind and only the upstairs was available. A curtain would be put behind the menfolk and 3 sisters would pray, and I was one of them. So I am eligible to vote. I have been here from day one. The sisters, everyone who donates to the masjid, everyone, whether sisters or brothers, is eligible to vote. They are a member automatically. You cut the fees, whatever it is for the election, for being member, and the rest goes for the masjid. Fine, but we are eligible to vote from day one. And it was horrifying. It was really horrifying to find out a few weeks ago that people had sued the masjid. And these were Muslims who had sued the masjid. This was unbelievable. I never heard of anything like this. How can Muslims sue their own house of God, their own place of worship? This is the house of God, for heaven's sake. Who is paying for this? The masjid is not paying for this. It's not going to come out from the funds that we collect year after year, with great difficulty. Whoever wants to sue the masjid, let them foot the bill. Let them foot the bill. And the attorney's bill just keeps ramping up. There's no stop to it. So it needs to stop.
Thank you for.
And
oh.
one more thing.
1 second, please.
One more thing. Whoever desires a position in Islam, it is not to be given to them. It is never to be given to them. These are positions that you are just requested to become, and that's it. If you want a position, you are not supposed to get, and you should never be given the position. And one last thing to Irfan, I was going to say, I was there at the khutbah that you gave, and it was, you had said you had discussed with everybody. But surprisingly, you had not involved the EC. They had no clue all this was going on behind the back. So I don't understand this. What is this?
Okay, allow
That's
me to, thank you for your question. Allow me to respond to the first two. I won't respond to your question that you directed to Dr. Iqbal, and I, because of my time constraints, maybe you can answer that afterwards, after I leave, because I just have very limited time and I want to take as many questions as I can. I do think it's very, very unfortunate that these things do end up in court. It's very sad. I mean, you would think that people should be able to sit down and talk these things through and work these things through. But disputes are just a reality of life. They shouldn't be, and altruistically, they should never happen, but they do happen. And speaking of altruism, you know, we wish that no person who desires a position should be in that position, but realistically, we would never have a board in any religious institution if every person who didn't want it wouldn't be on it. In other words, good people have to, who know how to, who are prepared to give time, who are prepared to give their efforts, oftentimes their money, to build an organization, end up being people who are involved in governing the organization. It's just a reality. So I read that section in your current bylaws, in your current constitution, and it's a beautiful way of approaching it. Everyone should, I wish that every organization, especially in houses of worship, was made up of people who didn't ask for the honor and people begged them. But that's altruistic. That's the way it should be, but it's not always realistically that way. Of course, you want good people who are honest, and that's for sure. But you know, I think that the other one is a tough thing to realistically put into place. But I do feel, I agree with you completely that it's very unfortunate that this ends up in court.
What about her other question? People who've been paying and contributing to the masjid, like, are they allowed to vote? That is one of her questions.
I didn't hear her ask that as a question. I heard her say that she has been here from the beginning and she has paid and prayed, and therefore she should be entitled to a vote, and I assume she is entitled to a vote. I don't have, I'm not making decisions on that today. I'm not the person in charge of making the determination as to who is and who is not qualified to vote. So I didn't hear that as her question. Sure. Can you all go to Article 10? It's about halfway down the document. Let me look. I know exactly where it is. Give me just 1 second, please. Article 10, Section 1. Need my glasses. Okay, so what you see, I don't know if it's big enough for you to see. Yeah, it's small letters, but what I said in court was right out of Section 195, which is up on the screen of Article 10. Section 195 is organization and conduct of corporate meetings, how you run a meeting in a Article 10 congregation. And it says the presiding officer, first of all, there's two parts. The first thing says the presiding officer, let me go back one. The first name of the following persons who is present at such meeting shall preside thereat, to wit, the minister. So the minister, that's the imam, under the law presides. And the second thing it says is that the presiding officer at the meeting shall receive the votes. First, he takes the votes. Let's say you have all the ballots, you put it into a box, let's say, and he takes them. And he is to be the judge of the qualification of the voters. He declares, under the law, he declares who is qualified. Why? Because in the law assumes that there is a respect for the minister as the person who is running we call it the church, but of course church means in a statutory sense, including a mosque. We assume that the imam, it's his mosque, he's the religious leader, he knows who's a member because he preaches. So therefore, that's what the law says. Article 10 says that the imam makes the decision as to who's the qualified voters. Now, that doesn't mean that the minister makes the decision without unfairly or unrealistically. There are usually congregations have different ways of determining who the members are. But that's not a conversation that I'm going to have. I'm not qualified to answer that question, certainly not now, because that's an internal question that the congregation decides. Right now, all I know is the statute. The law is right there in black and white. You can all read it, and that's what I said in court. Okay?
I have a follow-up question, because since you're leaving, so I might as well have this question.
Sure. That's fine.
So, does Imam know Sister Nigar?
I'm sorry, are you asking me the question or the imam?
I'm asking Imam.
No, I'm sorry. This is my time for me. If you want to ask the imam questions, you can please ask him later, because I have very limited time right now.
The reason for that question is because the first vote which is going to happen is incorporation of Article 24. And for that is who's eligible to vote. And who can vote. This is the first thing that we're going to decide. And Imam is who's going to decide whose vote counts. And my argument was, Imam doesn't know our sisters. Our sisters stay up there. So if someone who contributes to the masjid, first question comes down to who's considered a member?
Yes.
That's the first question. And how are we going to decide whose votes count? So that's the first question since you were here. My apologies, Umar, for cutting you off.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So it's a very fair question. Membership is always the hardest question. Every time there's a vote, and if you were to pull, we have Lexis and Westlaw, the legal research bases, and if you were to pull every case involving a church dispute, I would say probably 75% of them, one of the key issues is who is a member and who gets to vote, because that determines the power of the vote, where the vote goes. So membership is a very, very complicated question. And as I started saying before, the imam doesn't just make up, you're a member, you're not. Obviously, by virtue of his position, there is an assumption that he's responsible, that he loves God, that he loves the mosque, and he's going to do the right thing by God and by the people and by the law. So he's going to be advised by people around. And there are going to be people who are going to sit down and show him, perhaps at some point, I have never met him until today, but perhaps at some point, I will have the opportunity to sit down with him and talk about, or with some other people, about under the law, how it works, who the qualified, who should qualify, who should not. Ultimately, if there's a question of should this person vote or is this person a member, is not, the law gives him the power ultimately to decide. But it's, as I said, it's not going to be in a vacuum. He's going to follow. He's going to look at who's going to, I assume, again, Imam, have we ever met until today? Have we ever spoken until today? No. So I assume that before the member meeting, whenever that comes, he and I and maybe Dr. Iqbal or maybe some other people will meet and we'll look through the law and how it works and what the criteria are. Dr. Iqbal mentioned before that the treasurer had spent a tremendous amount of time looking at who had contributed and so on, and all of these things. But I want to say one other thing. The law gives you some guidance on who is or who is not a member. So the law says people who have paid and prayed are generally considered members unless there's a definition in the bylaws. That's literally what the law says. Why don't you go to section here? Actually, it's right here in this section. It's right up on top. So at the top of this page right here, it says, At a corporate meeting of an incorporated church to which this article is applicable to the following persons and no others shall be the qualified voters. It says who. Who are the qualified voters? First, option A, all persons who are then members in good and regular standing at such church by admission into full communion or membership therewith. Okay, let's just, the rest is very convoluted and arcane in language. But one option is people who are members as defined in a bylaws or whatever, or, where's the or part? It's way down here. Here. Just give me a second. What's that? I'm going to get there in a second. Just give me a second. Or, here's the or part, who have been stated attendants on divine worship in such church and have regularly contributed financial support during the next year preceding such meeting. So under the law, there are two options. Either you look at your own membership rules that say who's a member and therefore who votes, or you have in the last year, within the last year, contributed and prayed. And there's a case, an appellate case in New York that explains that and says that doesn't mean that you showed up one day before the meeting. It means that within the entire last year, 12 months ago, 11 months ago, 10 months ago, 9 months ago, and so on, you have prayed and paid. So there's one case that says, because there was a case like this where there was a battle, a dispute in a congregation, so one side signed up 100 members at the day before the election. And the courts interpreted this statute and said, no, you have to have a full year within the last year, even 12 months ago, 11 months ago. Now, your bylaws, your constitution, say 6 months, 180 days. Believe it or not, I'm not even sure. Well, yes, it is. If you follow Part A, where your own bylaws say 180, then that's fine. Alternatively, if you don't want to follow your own bylaws and you say the bylaws are not good, then it's a whole year. Then it's 12 months, not 6 months. So I don't know a way where somebody who signed up as a member last month gets to vote at a meeting tomorrow. It doesn't sound right. That's why the law says 1 year. Your bylaws actually cut it down to 180 days, but it doesn't make sense that somebody who signs up a month ago or 2 months ago gets to vote in a member meeting now with people who have been here for 35 years. So that's why when the sister asked the question, I said, absolutely, if you've been here and you've paid and prayed for 35 years, of course she gets to vote.
The reason is what Sister was saying, and I think this goes for entire congregation. Most of the people here who have taken their time to come today, they've been paying members of this masjid. They've contributed to this masjid. They've prayed at this masjid. But since we never followed our bylaws ever, membership never meant anything. Prior to 1 year, we had 16 members. So you're telling me a congregation of 500 people, 16 members are allowed to vote? So there comes the problem. There comes the problem. So if anyone who has a record of paying and contributing to this masjid in any capacity should be allowed to vote. You should be eligible to vote because you've contributed to the masjid, because this masjid never held elections prior to this. You have a very good point, because we weren't following anything, any bylaws. But I don't want to hijack their meeting, but I'm just sticking to one point, and I can answer that point too if you want to, but that's not my place to answer those questions. I'm just talking about specifically, there were 16 members when we took over, and after that, for the first time at this mosque, at least I've been here since 2005, we ran a campaign to make everyone member. And we brought in the first CRM system, which keeps tracks of who is coming in, and no one can change it, because that's how the modern world works. You see those signs up there? Up there, people can scan and become member of this masjid. So that's my question. How are we defining who can participate? This is the first time we're holding elections. So that's my question.
Thank you. Thank you for your question. This is a conversation that's an important conversation to have. It's not a conversation we're going to have now because I only have 10 minutes and I want to answer as many questions as I can. Obviously, that's an important question, and I'm glad it's being asked. There is guidance, I believe, in the new CBL as to that, and it can be even more streamlined and more defined. There should be, the law says that before we enact bylaws, we're supposed to tell people that there's a meeting, there's going to be bylaws, and people have the opportunity to look at the bylaws for this exact reason. We want people to know what they're signing up for, to have conversation about it, and to fix things that are not perfect. Nothing is perfect. So thank you for your question, and as Dr. Iqbal said, there will be other meetings, but I want to take, if you want to answer it when your time is, because right now I just want to take as many questions as I can while I'm here for a few more minutes. Any other questions that anyone has for me?
Brother, let me go first. I've been here for a while. Assalamu alaikum. So, brother, my name is Omar. I've been coming to the mosque now for 20 years. I was married here. My sister was married here. My brother was married here. And I have 2 kids now that go to MDQ Academy. So I think this is very important that we get our word out. And Dr. Iqbal, thank you so much for spending your time here and being the middle person. Now, a few years ago, an election happened where a president lost. And that president decides to sue and say, hey, the votes were rigged. Nothing is fair. Thank God Trump didn't win. And he's not the president. And I feel like the same thing happened here where the party that lost the election decides to sue, and those same people are now trying to get lifetime seats on the BOT, which doesn't make sense. How is it that the person who's suing the masjid could force his way onto the BOT, and those people do not have kids that go to MDQ Academy? Those are the same people that were in power for 10, 15 years, and look at the status of the masjid now. We don't have family nights. We don't have any events that go on for our kids. And those same people don't want MDQ Academy.
That's not the question.
So, I'm sorry, I was going on a tangent. So now I want to know is, the people that are running for BOT and that will be assigned these lifetime seats, who's choosing them? And do we get to question them on this? Or are they just elected, by this bylaw and they'll get their seat and that's it, and we don't have a say on that?
You're choosing them if you choose them. You don't have to choose them. But when there is an election, when there's the meeting, the member meeting, if you vote in favor of that setup, then they will become the first set of lifetime trustees. If you vote against them, they won't. It's going to be a majority. That's what Article 10 says. It's a majority rule. So it's fair and honest and open election, and that's how it's supposed to work.
My name is Farouk. I am since here, this mosque is 2001, still. Thank you. Coming is our honorable attorney, Mr. Berry, and thank you, Dr. Ifran, and thank you our Imam, Muhammad Azmal, and I am so grateful to our who make this house of Allah is 1988, December 2nd. And thanks for Dr. Iqbal, he wrote the bylaws that day. I just heard it today. And thank you for our EC and brother and sister, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. I do not go any places. Before I just tell to one thing is Dr. Iqbal say, these people has a 2 group. Two group. You say that 2 group. I do not see any group here. I see we are brother and sister. And we came to here sake of Allah. Nothing else. Allahu Akbar. So my first question, only one question, our honorable attorney, Mr. Berry, my question is just before my brother is Farhad say this only one things I do the several times is the member here. Before our ex-president, Mr. Riyad, and our ex-president, Mr. Shahid Mia, I always tell to them, say, brother, do the some system in the, and everything need to system, you know. Without system, you cannot make a good governor, good administration. And my dear brother Shahid Mia is laughing. I say several times, I need to some, my opinion, I need to some, he's the member, he's a need to basically count how could be website, whatever, you know, you need to proper things, you know. So I have a question. This time I see the Mr. My brother is the Fuad, right? He's the vice president. Farhad do the, he's the QR. You see the QR? If you scan QR, the coming list and you can go to the board. They are going to the system. I want to this one. And my last question, attorney, you say before, I heard it, the bylaws say he is the 108 days you need to the member. That means 6 months. But I think so, how could we proceed our new bylaws? You say that this going to the constitution under the law is 10, Articles 10, not 24. Right now we follow, right? We do not follow, the attorneys say, we do not follow the 24 articles. We follow the number 10 articles. So my opinion is how could be next election, our mocks, we do the some, take the some, time. For example, 3 months, 6 months, in the time, we make a properly decision. This is my opinion. How could we make the membership? This is the most important things. If you do not make a organized way membership, but election, again is the quarrel coming.
Okay, I'm not sure what the question was, but here's my answer.
Jazakallah khair.
So my answer, I think I'm not clear about the question, but my answer, I think, is we have devised, I agree with you that membership is extremely important, and a great deal of emphasis has been given and should be given to defining membership, to keeping going forward. You should have a very clear membership list and record. We have that in here. The secretary is supposed to keep a list. The imam writes down every time a person becomes a member. It has to be very, very clear going forward. This might be my last question, so. Oh, please, I would love to hear, yes.
At the request of Sister Nagar, she is asking, please email the MDQ community who are especially here right now, the PDF that you have on the screen, the laws, to be emailed to everyone, to be accessible right now.
For sure.
Yes, thank you.
Should I? Okay.
Yes, no, go ahead.
Is there any other question that
I promise to be very, very brief.
Huh?
I promise to be very, very brief.
my last
So I had a chance to skim over the CBL, the draft. From my understanding, there are to be 18 Board of Trustees, 9 that are lifetime, 9 that are elected. It says that in order to remove a lifetime member, 2/3 of the lifetime members have to vote. And in order to remove a trustee, 2/3 of the BOT has to vote in a meeting that is specifically called for this removal. With these two things in mind, especially in regards to the fact that 2/3 of the lifetime members have to vote to remove a lifetime member, My question for you is, are there any provisions that account for a possible sort of, I don't want to use the word corruption, but more so people kind of sticking together, and even if there is a problem, you know what I'm saying? Like not removing a person because of that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, that's the reason that you usually see. Generally, the general rule, especially in Article 10s, but in the RCL and the Religious Corporation Law in general, the general rule is that everything is done by a majority vote. The two provisions in Article 10s that, other than bylaw provisions, the two things that specifically are raised, are elevated to a two-third level are transfer of property, because it's so important, and the implementation or modification of bylaws, because they're so important. So it's the very, very, very important things. And for that reason, sometimes things like the removal of a member, because you don't just want a majority, it's something very, very, very serious. So you raise the bar and you say, you're going to take such a serious step like to remove somebody, you need to have what's called a supermajority. So that's why we put two-thirds in there for those provisions, just for that reason, to avoid just one group ganging up on a faction saying, we don't like this guy, let's get rid of him. So you have to have a much higher bar. That's why we did that. All right, everyone, I just want to thank you very much for welcoming me in here. I'm happy to come another time if there are other things, but I'm sure you will work these things out. I encourage you to work these things out in these kinds of meetings. I am very, very, very happy to see that there's been such beautiful decorum and people have spoken respectfully. I hope I have done well, and again, I thank you so much for having me here.
Barry, one last question quickly. It's on Article 24, since you are the subject matter experts. It provides that elder board have spiritual oversights. Those are the people who will actually be under the Article 24 who have lifetime membership. But that is not the case in the bylaws.
Right, because if you look at Article 24 closely, it says either the spiritual oversight of the church, it calls it a church, of the mosque, is either in an eldership board or in an imam or in different forms of religious leadership. So it gives you options. So one option is a congregation that doesn't want to give the spiritual oversight to the imam, it could give it to an eldership board. But that's not the way we ended up formulating this after
Yes,
much
the
discussion.
bylaws are completely, current bylaws which have been proposed and which have been distributed are giving complete control to the elders board on finances, the decisions, who becomes the member and who doesn't become a member, who can be removed. So all of those decisions. So is that in the spirit of Article 24, which was...
I'm so sorry, I'm on the way out.
I'll
so-
share his information. I'll share your
Yeah,
information.
no, everything in the current CBL, everything is completely, of course, in compliance with both the spirit and the letter of Article 24. Article 24 creates the kind of language that you see in Article 24, for example, where it says trustees can be elective or appointed either by virtue of their office, by virtue of their office, which implies by seniority. So we made this look so much like Article 24, but Article 24 wants you to have flexibility in the governance form, whereas Article 10 is completely black and white. You have an annual election, the voters pick the trustees, and no one but the voters removes them. There's no appointment, there's only election. There's no flexibility, very little flexibility in Article 10. Article 24, by design, has this flexibility, which is why we created something that reflects as closely as we could your old constitution and your actual form of governance.
Because one of the Board of Trustees members is saying one of the reasons to move towards Article 24 is to give lifetime control to Board of Trustees certain members. And that is the entire reason why we're moving towards this particular Article 24.
That's not true.
It's not control. I don't know where you're seeing that. They have supervisory say, but it's not, the control is, the general control of the month to month, the meetings are by a vote, a regular vote of the board. Everyone, a lifetime trustee and a elected trustee, one vote each. No more for lifetime than a member. The only real functional difference is that the lifetime trustees aren't elected every year, so they've earned the right to have a seat, a more permanent seat, where they can only be removed for cause. But other than that, they're functionally the same. One vote for each one.
So-
No one's vote counts more. So I apologize.
No, I understand. I
Have a nice day.
understand.
Thank you again.
I'll answer as much as possible.
Thank you so much. It was such an honor to be here. Thank you.
Hello?
His car is parked right outside the street, okay? Any,
Can I ask a question?
yeah, no, you definitely can. I'm just saying if there are other people who haven't had an opportunity to ask, let them ask first. Are there other, your brother Irfan, आपने हाथ उठाया था? Huh? No, अच्छा, you don't have it. I thought you had your hand. Yes, brother Sajjad. Let people who haven't asked a question, let them ask first, and then you can come as a repeat. Also, please, the session has not been adjourned yet, so if we can please still keep the decor you've been. You are, after this, please. Sure. I thought I saw your hand. Go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Sajjad Ahmed. I've been working with this masjid from last 12 years as an assistant treasurer. I know the situation, some of the brothers, I want to correct them. One of our brother, maybe more, they ask is the people, the petitioner, they sue the mosque. This is not correct. Second, they say they sue the EC. This is also not correct. The petitioner sue the decision of the BOT, which was in favor of president to elect, not but elect by selection. So they sue that things. So make sure, may differentiate between, nobody sue the masjid, nobody sue the EC. They only sue the decision which is not correct. Second thing,
Go ahead.
some of the people, they say, masjid been sued, and for that, the masjid pay $50,000, which is also not correct. Let me correct these people, because I am here in masjid from last 12 years. Even a single dollar check cannot be issued without the permission of president. Second thing, this was a big amount, over $1,000. The BOD also involved in this issue of this check. So how come the $50,000 issue from masjid and nobody knows? So this is not correct. This was with the consultant of the BOT. That's why they pay Mr. Berry as an attorney, because Mr. Berry is the attorney of the BOT, whereas the petitioner have another attorney. So that's, I want to clear this thing, and I said already in the 12th of July, when the people came to the masjid, and I explained everything. So this was my I'm bound to my duty to explain these questions. Yeah. No, I'm saying this is paid from the masjid account, but with the approval of BOT. Nobody. So every BOT member. Yeah, they approved this thing.
Yeah, so they paid.
See, my question is this. My answer is this.
Brother Sajjad, let me-
$50,000 paid from the masjid with the approval of BOT.
Brother Sajjad,
You should stop, brother. Excuse me.
okay, Brother Sajjad,
Yeah.
okay. Right now,
This,
No,
I
no.
was duty bound
No.
to explain because I have been this masjid with the assistant treasurer. Even this easy, I worked 9 months on the request of the president. and
Brother
the
Sajjad,
Western
Brother
BOT
Sajjad,
member.
Brother Sajjad.
And, let me finish, brother.
No, I'm just saying, right now, we said no crosstalk. If you have a comment, you make the comment.
Brother Fawad is my witness. I worked with them for 9 months as a assistant treasurer on their request. And when they give me another person, when he become trained, then I say, you are okay now. Even then, if you need my help, after that, I came and I count with them. I guide you in what I have experienced. Jazakallah.
Brother Irfan, my name is Irfan Khwaja. My little concern is, look at this hard, these people, they work odd jobs. They bring $100 a day and they donate $10 in the mosque. Why BOT make wrong decision to pay attorney fees? They decided with Dr. Hafiz, they will pay from their pocket. Dr. Hafiz pay the retainer to this attorney and they're supposed to share. And Dr. Hafiz sent messages to them, share this money, and nobody answered it. First they decided they will pay. Now they're paying for the mosque money, for these people's hard-earned money. Shame on them. Shame on them. Thank you, thank you. The other thing is, why the office of this mosque, anybody can take anywhere. This should be
Nobody can take.
there should be right here. In past, if you look at it, I had a small example. Somebody was looking for burial plot, they paid it, and masjid had no record. And they have to fight with them and get this information from their home by force.
Right.
So this is not right. This is my
So
comment.
let me respond. Brother Sajjad, please.
Let me explain again. As the brother said,
He's asking me a question. I would respectfully, respectfully ask you. He asked me a question. I respectfully ask you to sit down and let me respond if you, let me, okay. Because they're asking me a question and obviously not being, so let's keep let those people ask first. Let me please just respond quickly to Brother Irfan's two queries. Number one, with respect to the monies that have been paid, what in the spirit of openness, fairness, and transparency, how this decision was made, there is a 17-page PDF document of the trail of how this decision was made. What I'll do is I'll share that with you. Review it, and then once you have that document, you still have questions, ask the attorney. So this way, it will give you entire chronology of how this decision came about with respect to your first. Being not an attorney, I cannot answer that, but it also includes Zoom meetings that I personally did in light of certain factors of the insurance company and claims, why they specifically legally required the money to be paid from the masjid account. It gives you it's a 17-page document with all the emails. Read it. Just make sure, and then if you're still not satisfied, then we have till August 8th to answer a lot of questions. With respect to your second question, the reason why that little phrase was added, or actually, if you look at the old bylaws, if you have, by now I know them by heart, the Article 10 bylaws, the current bylaws, and what we're proposing. In light of certain things that have happened over the years where natural disasters have happened, right? Things can happen where you do need to relocate for a temporary purpose, or even on residential. Sometimes we get PO boxes in a post office. So the idea is that it's not relocate, that they can. If you look at the phrase, it says it may relocate its offices if needed. Especially at the advent, if you look at the last 2 years, a lot of laws have changed in light of COVID, right? COVID, when happened, and if you look at I can refer sections to you, it's always good. We, in our company, in our corporation, added that our headquarters can be relocated if needed as a result of that. That doesn't mean that it will be or it necessarily has to happen. It's just in light of things that are evolving, this was added. This doesn't mean that people will add. So that's the background to it. That's the explanation. Whether you agree with it or not, now you have CBL. This is a comment. Now the Imam has noted, he will forward it to the attorneys that certain members are objecting to having this line. They can take it out. So you've brought up a point. I've just given you the explanation, not justification. The explanation of how those laws, why that was included. That's why I say that this TRO, I mean, I don't want to speak behind the back of the attorney. Honestly, when I was out of country, when this was decided that the particular thing about CBL being 3 copies and only in the masjid, that was the one point over the last 2 months that the attorney and I disagreed. And when he's here next time, you can ask him. I said, no, just give it to everybody. But they said they had a certain logic that in the law, RCL, it said, and I'll explain on behalf of the attorney I asked him, what's your logic of quote unquote restricting? And their logic was that people who are really interested, because think about it, the idea is that every year in 35 years you've had it, just visualize for a second, कि हर 35 साल में ये meeting होती रही है, जो कि होनी थी. Election हुए, bylaws के copy पड़ी हुई है, everything is there. So people usually in the statutory sense of the word have come and studied it over there. Nobody has ever been interested in taking home. My contention was, I mediated the entire thing for the last 2 months, not being present in the masjid, through Zoom, right? So why can't people also read through electronic means? Unfortunately, in my opinion, fortunately, a judge has said that you have to. So now we're doing it. Now you have, the attorneys are supposed to appear back on the 8th and give evidence that they have tried as much. Will the judge like it? I don't know. Will the judge accept it and say, yes, now you have fulfilled all the conditions? Maybe the judge will say, no, still not. Then they will give another 30 days, another 20 days. At some point, this congregation has to decide the chronology that I gave, how long, even let's say for a moment, whether the money came from masjid account, I, out of my generosity, can one day decide, no, just like the other people. I don't disagree with Dr. Hafizur Rahman's logic that, initially they paid and Rafi Rajput paid the first check. Nobody disagrees with the logic. I might say, here, $100,000 check. I don't want the masjid to pay for it. But there are certain dictates. This masjid has a 280-page insurance policy by Church Mutual. Raise your hand right now, anyone from the BOT or anyone who has read the entire 280 pages. Denied. And I'll tell you why they have denied. And right. So now let me answer that. Right. I don't know about that. Yeah, I don't know about that. Okay. Yes. But let me answer that. No need to get emotional. आराम से हम आपस में discuss कर रहे हैं ना, आराम से बात करते हैं. It's not. You can point out something someone wrong did. That's what I'm trying to inculcate, the spirit, that it's okay. But you didn't let me finish. I'll tell you. It might be easy to you, but not necessarily to the congregation. Everybody should be given all the information. So this policy, we're all fearful. There's nobody here that's not fearful. Everyone is fearful of Allah. And we don't have a right to tell people that we should be fearful. Everyone is fearful of Allah. These are all... Session. Yes. Okay.
Assalamu alaikum. Mr. Barry Black left. I didn't get a chance to say this in front of him. I should have. Maybe force myself up. When we first got these law firm before Iqbal, before Irfan Iqbal came in the picture, going from Article 10 to Article 24, discussion was taking place with the lawyer. And I wish he would been here to tell. His words were that, oh, I have done many elections, and I have won many elections. I know how to do elections. I said that? Very black. Oh, okay. Very black. Yeah. That I have done many elections, and I know how to win elections. I will bring my own ballot boxes, and I will know which votes to count and which to discard. On a Zoom meeting, I held my hand onto my head and said, is this an officer of the court talking? This is exactly what he tried to do on that Monday. 3 copies to be shared with 1,000 people. People are coming and asking me, what are we voting for? I said, go to the Imam's office. I sat out, 3 brothers went in there, spent 2 hours, and still didn't know what they were voting for. So this sort of thing should never happen, where they try to shove something down your throat without knowing, without the congregation. You are all learned people. You are the owners of this masjid. And the most important thing, again, I keep repeating it, you should all be repeating it too. Fear Allah. And I hope that Barry Black has learned a lesson too from the Imam's little sermon and whatever he has seen today. Thank you, Judge. That's why we are here. Otherwise, we would have been taken for a ride on Monday. Thank you.
Okay, give me a minute, please. Okay.
Go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I have only 3 suggestions, or you may say 3 questions. And I will take a vote of every one of you who are sitting here today. In front of the honorable, our BOT members and the EC members. We've been hearing this a long, long time, that all the young peoples are our future. Did you see any future in their committee? In their board meetings? So if you want, please vote today with the raise your hand and elect at least 2 members of our youth. They are standing right behind us. Alhamdulillah. So that's number 1. And I'm coming back to the sisters. So as well as we had that question before, as you said, that 2 sisters minimum at least has to be on the board member, which is, please raise your hand and give a vote. It's right there. Number 3, I've been coming in this masjid since 2001. Many of time, I am given $100 as a membership. Last month, I gave $100 to Brother Fawad, and I asked him my membership number. They couldn't find anywhere. And everyone knows me. I hope so. Am I eligible to vote? Because I just paid last month. So my suggestion is get rid of $100. As the attorney was saying, that Imam has the right to recognize whose vote is valid or whose vote is not valid. So if Imam knows me from my years that I'm coming here, so he can say, okay, he's eligible for my vote, right? So my vote can be recognized. And if I just start coming in the masjid from last 4 or 5 months, and I'm saying, okay, I'm gonna vote, he have a right to reject me. So that is my question, please get rid of the $100, recognize the people who was coming here for years, they don't have a record anymore of that membership, and also all of us gave the rights to vote as well as elect our youth who are our future, that we've been hearing this over and over. This is our future. This is our future. But our future is unfortunately blind. We cannot see it. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Jazakallah. Assalamu alaikum. I just want you to know my name is Wajiha. You said future. I want you to see the future in plain sight. This is a sister who is learned, educated, aware of laws, aware of things, how it should be conducted in Islam and how it should be conducted outside of Islam. What is right, what is wrong. Of course, with the help and the direction of the Imam, alhamdulillah that we so have, we know how to conduct businesses today. We know how to insert ourselves into businesses today. We know how to conduct a conversation with an attorney. We know how to conduct a conversation with a mediator. What I would like to know for the plain people, if you want to blanket them under the term plain, we received a text message, a few hundreds of us received a text message to vote no or vote yes for this Article 24. For a person who is either too busy or either who is too occupied in their prayer in this house of worship, why? We understand you kind of broke down the technicalities. You gave some transparencies that everybody was happy to vote on this Article 24 or whatever these CBLs, these bylaws, or whatever you had put out. I know you said a lot of lingo, a lot of jargon, but still I believe for the few people that are here and the hundreds of people that are in the text messages, why are we here today? You gave a chronological events, this list, but let's rewind a little bit. Who sued who? Why did he sue? What happened? I want to know why I was called here for this Q&A today. So here's my question. What happened? Who sued who and why did they sue? What is the transparency in that? I would love to see that displayed over there. Okay?
Let me just address that. In the chronology, that two questions, and if I may interpret, if I'm anywhere not addressing the question in exactly the chronology that you mentioned or in the way you asked, but let me attempt in a way. When I mentioned the chronology, I mentioned that, or I stated that the reason why we're here is because of that lack of clarity. That should have been done And I mentioned about 2-3 times that in my opinion, it should have been done much before. All of you are witness to that it should have been done much before. The reason why we are here is because that wasn't done and because of a judge's order, and I started with that it is a very good order, that it should have been done. And the third thing I mentioned was that I actually disagreed with the attorney on this particular matter, that it should be circulated to everyone. Thank you for that. Yeah, I said that 3 times. Yeah, oh, okay, all right. You're welcome. With respect to the chronology, I think I mentioned, but let me clarify as a result of your question, sister. So because all these things, and remember, I came in on April 21st with my exposure to just the petition, right? There was something going on, and I read the petition. Anything that transpired before that, in the few months before it, is none of my concern, nor did I go into that. I looked at the petition, and the petition said that the BOT, now, who the petition was filed by, which is why I think I mentioned a group of people that filed the petition within the masjid that opposed the election because the BOT was unconstitutional. That's what the petition said. The petition can be, I don't know, I don't have a copy of it right now, that can be given to you. Well, I'm using the terms BOT and petitioner. Ethically, I don't want to name people, which I haven't done, so I'm going to keep with my ethics, which is I've never named the BOT, and I showed you, yes, that includes the 12 mediation signatories. That document you can see. That's on WhatsApp groups and all that. So instead of me to preserve my ethics as a mediator, because I don't want, the document that I showed you, in fact, let me answer it this way. The document that I showed you has names of all the people, the mediation signatories that are the petitioners. So see that document and you'll get your names. They are in the names. They are in there. Okay, right. So if what I can do, yeah, I think everyone has it. On that, in that document, I can differentiate between the BOT and the petitioners. Sure. Sure. Right. Sure. So may I suggest to you, whatever questions that you feel will promote more clarity and transparency, you can send to the imam and he can respond to it. Or I can help him respond to it. Instead of an organized list of questions, no problem. Any question that you have that you feel, because then I will take it I will give it to the attorneys, and ask them, is there any legal restraint to answering any of these questions? And that's it. I will respond, because remember, I'm not a party to anything. My job is to respond. This documentation of my own time from various different countries, I prepared these trails, right? And I can share these trails. I just don't want somebody right now, because here there's sort of a trend of people, questioning in terms of legal terms. I just don't want to put myself in a legal problem where I reveal something. In my opinion, everything should be transparent. So if you, as to go through a process, you said you are a very process-oriented person. So in order to go through the process, send those questions. I will respond duly. I'm here for another week. Whatever questions that I can respond to, I will respond to. Imam Saab's email. Yes. Sure. Imam Saab can, I'll write his email right now so everybody can see that. It's actually, correct me if I'm wrong, m.ajmal, m.ajmal16 @yahoo.com. Is that correct? All right. Good. Sir. Yes, he forwarded to the attorneys. He did. Right, and that was the point of this session. Inshallah, the next session, all the list of questions should be answered in that format. Yes, he did forward it to them. Some of them have been addressed today. Some of them, I just got to see it about 2 days ago. So I, again, have volunteered to compose the answers based on and then the attorneys can share and Imam can share that with you. Yes, Imam will do that. Imam. Yes, absolutely. Go ahead, brother.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.
I'm sorry, sister? Anything else? All right, thank you. For now, I know. Yes, please go ahead.
Bismillah. Omar Jamil here. Just wanted to understand a question from the sisters as well as from the brothers circulating where there's a suggestion being made where instead of the bylaws, the system that we have in place, which is the system that we are introducing in the new bylaws, which says that every member who can vote can only be somebody who has an existing membership by signing up through the QR codes. Correct. That is going to be the new rule going forward, right?
No.
If we vote for it.
No, the new rule hasn't been decided. Let me just hear, and I'll let you complete your question.
Sure.
I think because the attorneys have a tendency to be very legal, and rightfully so, and they quote laws. When they sat down and decided the criteria, and even if you look at the TRO that the judge signed, everything has to go, you have to have reference. It's not that the imam decides, when even that needed to be explained a little bit better, and I'm just going to say a layperson comment on that, which is that in the bylaws, in Article 5, look it up, it's in your previous bylaws. This is the
This is not this one.
Not this one. Remember, you have two bylaws. Take time to compare the both. This is your old bylaws, which for 35 years have not been followed, unfortunately. And this is your new proposed. In this, whoever wrote this, the old ones, they say that a member in good standing who can vote is a person who has paid their membership dues. They can only be eligible to vote after 180. The bylaws say that. Article 10, the lawyer just showed you, shows 1 year. So the question was, who do you follow? And the answer was, if you're going to hold this election by this bylaws, this current bylaws, then you have to follow 180 days. If you're going to hold it through the new ones, then it would be a preceding year. Though that's the difference. So Imam doesn't decide based on your faces. Imam has, when the attorney says that the Imam decides and counts the vote because of his spiritual status, you know that he's not corrupted to switch votes. But he has certain guidelines. He has to follow the bylaws. And the bylaws say a certain rule, which you may or may not like. A sister mentioned earlier, I agree. You've been coming here to this masjid for like 20, 30, 40 years. You've been regularly contributing. But the people who wrote the bylaws said that in order to vote, they didn't take any of other privileges away. These people who wrote the bylaws, the old BOT or whoever at that time in 2007, they said in order to vote in an election, Article 5, Section 4 says this is the criteria. So now if I put a criteria in front of you, you can agree and disagree with it, but if you're disagreeing with it, you're disagreeing with the people who wrote the bylaws, or you're disagreeing with the people who wrote the very bylaws.
Correct.
That's the criteria.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Good. So now, when I hear this, and you explain this to any layman person, they'll understand that there's a proper structure in place for everyone to contribute and place their vote. My question, and this is, I don't want to seem partisan where I'm holding to one side and then, I don't want to do this. I'm not on one side or the other. I'm just here raising a few objections from the individuals that have shared this with me, that there's a little bit of ambiguity. when it comes down to Brother Fawad, who came here earlier explaining that every member, and this was a question from the sisters as well, that every person who has contributed any form of payment in any way, shape, or form can become a member who is eligible to vote for the BOT. Now that sounds very equitable, it sounds very fair, it sounds very nice. But the issue with that is, at least in my opinion, this could be clarified. We could go around and see how we can make this more efficient. If some random person comes to the masjid who has never been here in 25 and whatever time, and they just come here once a time, they're from, I don't know, from a different state, they're visiting the MDQ and they drop $5 in the box over there, does that give them an eligibility to place a vote? This person from another state, another city, another town, whatever, comes here one day, drops $1, drops $5, drops $100 in the box. Are they eligible to vote? I don't know. In my opinion, no, because that payment that is dropped in that box, how do we trace it to that person? Does that person come and say, oh, I want to be a voting member now? And he could be from a different state, from a different city, from a different town. We don't know this. So what I'm trying to suggest is if those individuals who are advocating for the position that any person who wants to place a vote, who contributes any form of monetary payment, if we don't have a system that can trace that payment to that very person to verify if they made that payment, because there's a lot of cash placed in that box over there. There's a lot of cash. I placed money in the past month. There's other people who have placed money in there too. We don't know who placed how much money and how much money should have been placed in order for them to become a member. So my suggestion is we want to understand and make this in a more concrete form, in a more coherent way. Whenever money is placed in that, if there can be a traceable method to trace it back to the person who placed that, and then we can advocate and then say, okay, that person has the right to vote. That's a suggestion that I had. Exactly.
Come up with methodology and give everyone the right to participate in their masjid with transparency. That's what's needing to be done. And then the second point is, under the bylaws, it says only person who can run for a position is a person who's been a member for 3 years. How many people qualify for that? I can tell you
0.
10. Only 10 people.
Okay.
So you're telling me you're rigging election by putting those 10 people eligible to run. That's called rigging, because you're designing the rules in a way to deliver certain results. So either you design it properly if you're going to do the election, or you can't just come up with, just 2 people sitting on the table, hey, this is how we're going to do it. So please give everyone, it needs to be transparent. And that was the reason when I went to the court to take that TOR, because you guys were trying to run the election, holding people's right to vote, never advertise the voting list, who can vote. Some people are telling me, you can't vote. But then people told me that anyone could vote.
Right. So very, very important suggestions. Again, keep in mind that that's what the current bylaws say. Unfortunately, that's what we're trying to correct. I agree with Brother Fawad that this is his suggestion. I prefer not to use words like rigging and things like that, because I don't think anyone had any intention like that. Simply stated, the bylaws stated that. The 3-year rule is stated in the current bylaws. So keep in mind, you have to have some document. Yes, the point is very valid. That's what I left for the attorneys, that listen, you have to decide which are you going to follow. And they said that the law of, let's say a law of precedence, since this has never happened before, that's why it creates confusion. But if no member of the congregation, and this is something I consulted with, I asked an attorney, that let's say, if nobody has followed, one thing should become very clear. In one sense, we are all here today, or we have been going through this for the last few months, is because the current bylaws were not followed. Does that mean that it's a dead document? No. It is a document. It may be a fractured document. It needs to be corrected. But the judge says that, the very TRO says, as long as they're within the existing bylaws, the word is used existing. It says existing. So this information session is because when I, upon my arrival, read, or when I was sent to me, I said, the judge just made it easy for you. That within existing bylaws, right? So if it is within existing bylaws, then let's have an information session, and what I've been saying from the very beginning, let people know that this is what the rules are. Nobody is making them. Nobody is fabricating them. Nobody is imposing them. It's the very bylaws by which the current EC was elected in 2022. It's the very bylaws that have been implemented that is still functioning. So you have absolutely every right to say those laws are not correct. They don't follow Article 10. I can point you based on my study of the current bylaws of this masjid, 17 points where it's non-compliant with either 501c or RCL. Does that mean I don't have to follow? And on a very higher level, people protest all the time what James Madison and George Washington wrote in the Declaration of Independence. Does that mean you don't follow them? That's what they did. So if tomorrow, and if somebody disagrees, there is a process, it's called amendment. So do an amendment. You can't just go on and change things without an amendment, but nobody followed those laws. So yes, overall, you are in a conundrum. The idea is to resolve that conundrum, not for positions. My impetus in facilitating this was not to give positions. Yes, the only thing I did, if you can say it, is out of respect for the current BOT. You can absolutely disagree with it, absolutely disagree with it. But that's my perspective. Nobody had to agree with it. The 12 people who signed agreed with it. The current members, or 7 members of the BOT agreed with it. Couldn't they have said at that time, no, Irfan, we don't agree with this? I would have just walked away. I would have been a much happier person than I was like 2 months ago. This last 2 months, the amount of time and money also that I've invested is just so that this masjid can actually start following laws. The only subjective thing I've done is this whole issue of lifetime trustees is I've said that 7 people, Dr. Rafi, let me start in chronology. Surat Khan, Amir Farooqi, Iqbal Khan, Dr. Hafizur Rahman, Rafi Rajput, Masood Hashmi, and Riyad Kham, and Athar Sohail, who's also the 8th board member. That these people, forgive them for what they did wrong, and move on and reincorporate. And I'm so glad that it is going to be done transparently. You have 30 more days to do it. That's the spirit with which every member of this, yes, the technicalities, who can vote. I totally agree with the sister. You've been here for 35 years. How can you not be eligible to vote? You know what the answer to that is? Your current bylaw said that you can't be. So it's not that the people who are devising, the answer to every question, which is why I say, and this again with all due respect to the elders of the BOT, काश कि आप लोगों ने अपने bylaws पढ़े होते.
काश कि आप लोग उन बायलॉज को फॉलो करते. मैं पर्दापोशी कर रहा था, मैं चाह रहा था कि इतना भी इनको एक्सपोज ना करें, कि इन लोग इनको कहें कि आज, if I were to attend this meeting right now, I would walk away with, इस सारा रोला इन्हें नहीं पाया. Right? आप इस जैसे जा सकते हैं. मैं ये कहता हूं, my impetus was, which again, I am not a member, nothing to do, not even vying for a position. Alhamdulillah. But my impetus was this. I have no favor, I don't care who becomes the president, who becomes the BOT member, nothing. My impetus was that at some point, for God's sake, 35 years, जो EC आई है पिछले 35 सालों में, has anybody even tried to see what does the law say?
Yes, and if I can just make one more suggestion, please. This goes back to what you're just about to say, because I'll be honest with you. Before this whole mess started, I did not even know that there was a constitution, if there's a constitution of 25 pages. Secondly, I don't know, the only person that I know of the BOT is Brother Sohail. I do not know anybody else from that. That may be a lack of me not wanting to involve myself in the community, but I'm sure there's 90% of kids, of the elders here, that do not know many members of the BOT. So I think going forward, once this new system is generated, once everybody agrees, we should hold a seminar and a recording to explain each and every article of the new constitution, or if we stick to the old one.
And inshallah,
Yes.
inshallah that will happen. Right now, my parting remarks to all of you are this. This masjid needs to reincorporate, okay? There is no ifs, ands, and buts about it. What are the rules for the reincorporation? Now it is all out in the open. The attorneys are gonna go meet again on August 8th, I believe. I think that's what the TRO said, I might be wrong, but that's the date. I think so. On that date, they're gonna go present the case. Ultimately, nothing can happen in a congregation, religious corporation law, Article 10, Article 24, Article 2 of the Religious Corporation Organization, RCO. Specifically in every instance states, it's the congregation with whatever criteria that you follow decides. My exhortation to you is that it's been 35 years without lack of governance. I'm involved right now on a personal note in another mediation, sort of mediation, on a much different political level. And those group of people, literally the words, if I may for a moment call him my political mentor, the words that we used in the first meeting was like, let's reincorporate Pakistan. When I first came, I was coming high off of that. And I said, maybe the same situation is happening here. Let's follow those laws. That man for the last 12 months is trying. The first time, I just received a WhatsApp from him because if I arrived properly or not. That man for 12 months is trying for what? Fair, transparent, and open elections. I have to, we will hold more sessions. That is my exhortation to you. Last question, last comment or question. I really do have to leave, but inshallah. Yes.